Hey, my friend's Mark Cunningham at Grace Property Management. So there's a lot of different ways to do property management, right? There's no one way. And if you do this and someone else does this way, like that's fine. We can all do property management in a lot of different ways and have it work for us. However, there are some first principles, some golden rules that I believe it doesn't matter if you do your business this way, or this way, that you have to follow. And if you don't, it's going to hurt your business. So if you don't do it this way, I believe you will pay the price. And one of these first principles or golden rules relates to maintenance. Simple process. Because maintenance, as you know, is one of the most time-consuming, difficult, complex parts of our business. That's why I believe there is a property management industry. If maintenance were not an issue, your owners probably wouldn't need you. They wouldn't want to hire you. It's one of the most difficult things we do is fixing things when they break, coordinating with vendors, coordinating with tenants, making sure the price is fair, the vendor gets in, who gets charged for it. Like, it's difficult. It's a difficult thing to do. So because of all those moving parts and components, you can do things a lot of different ways, but I advise you not to break this golden rule. You ready? You're sitting down on the edge of your seat. Are you leaning forward, just biting your fingernails? Good. Then my anticipation worked. Here we go. It's simply this. Whoever has the authority to spend the owner's money, meaning approval of maintenance, whoever has the authority to spend the owner's money must, underlined in red, must be the same person who tells the owner why they spent it. See, the authority to spend the owner's money has to come with the responsibility of explaining to the owner why they spent it. You say, well, Mark, that, duh, whatever, I don't get it. Here's the catch with this. Many of us in the PM industry want to do something like hire what we call a vendor coordinator. So we have a lot of property managers that work for us in our business, and one of the responsibilities of our property managers is maintenance. So when the tenant request comes in and they say, hey, my toilet won't flush, my oven doesn't work, my refrigerator doesn't cool, right? That request goes to the property manager. And my property managers then call the appropriate vendor, they send them out, they review the invoice, they tell it to get paid, they handle all that. My property managers often say things like this, hey Mark, you know, my job would just be so much easier if we could just hire like a vendor coordinator to take care of all this maintenance stuff. So when calls comes in, it doesn't go to me, I'm the property manager, I'm busy. Instead, it would go to a vendor coordinator or somebody like that. They can take the call. They can call the appropriate vendor. They can get it scheduled. It'll free up my time. Can we just get that done? Can we just please do that? And I always say, no, it sounds like a good idea. But see, remember our golden rule of maintenance. You have the authority to spend your owner's money. So therefore, when you spend their money and they want to know why, you need to explain to them why you spent it. Because if we have a vendor coordinator, see, then they have the authority to spend the owner's money, but guess who's talking to the owner about why it was spent? Yeah, you are. And that doesn't work so well. Now, we could have the vendor coordinator be the one to talk to the owner and explain why they spent their money. Well, then we wouldn't be violating this principle. That's fine. But typically, the vendor coordinator isn't necessarily the one who's talking to the owner. Because you as the PM, you know your owner. You understand if they believe in band-aiding problems versus replacing stoves when they start to malfunction. Only you know that as the PM. Your vendor coordinator doesn't know the specifics of every owner client like you do. So that's why I think it's best principle to have you or your property manager be the one who's communicating with your owner client, spending their money and telling them why they spent it. So let me give you an example of what happened to one company that I know very well that violated this and how it kind of burned them a little bit. But before I do that, I want to thank the sponsor for this video, Tenant Turner. Tenant Turner is an automated marketing service for your vacant properties. Marketing your vacant properties is tough. A lot of demand. We use Tenant Turner. So when leads come in, it flows through Tenant Turner. It automates a lot of the system. They can automate it all the way up to scheduling showings and doing the whole 9 yards. They can just do bits or pieces or everything for you. If you're busy with leasing, like I suspect you are, you need to reach out to Tenant Turner. Talk to them over there. They're awesome. Tell them I sent you. Ask them for a demo on their product. You'll be impressed. I promise you. Okay, so as I mentioned, we've got a bunch of PMs in our office. And when owner leads or when vendor requests come in or when tenants call with a repair request that goes to the property manager, the property manager determines, whose responsibility is this? Is this a tenant responsibility? Is this an owner responsibility? And oh, okay, you know what? This is an owner responsibility. So I'm going to forward the call or forward the request on to the plumber, and the plumber's going to go out and get that done. And then I'll follow up with the tenant, make sure it was done. I'll review the invoice. I'll submit it to AP for account for payable. The owner will call and say, hey, why'd you fix that toilet? And I'll say, oh, because it broke, and so it had to be fixed. And okay, that's the way we do it. Okay. We had a PM who worked for us a couple years ago. Steve was his name. Steve was awesome. I love Steve. Hi, Steve, if you're watching this, buddy. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Okay, so Steve had to move out of the area. He moved to Colorado Springs, so he had to leave us. We all cried. We're very sad. Steve got another job as a PM for another large company, national company, in Colorado Springs. And Steve has always given me a hard time when he worked for us. He was always like, Mark, we need to hire a vendor coordinator, take all this junky vendor maintenance stuff off my plate so I can do what I'm really good at. Why don't we do that? And I would say, no, Steve, we're not going to do that. And so he got this job at this other PM company, and he called me one day. I said, Steve, how's it going? He said, oh, I love my new job. I said, that's great, Steve. And he said, Mark, get this. We've got a vendor coordinator. I don't have to take all those silly repair calls anymore, Mark. That goes to our vendor coordinator. And I love my job even more than I loved working for you because we have vendor coordinators. I said, hey, congratulations, Steve. I'm happy for you, man. Ah, yeah. So he gave me a hard time and we hung up, and great. I talked to Steve about 3 months later. I said, hey, Steve, how's it going, man? How's the job? He said, Mark, it's terrible. It's terrible. I said, terrible? I thought you loved it. What are you talking about? It's terrible. What do you mean, Steve? He said, well, here's the problem. Remember I told you how we have vendor coordinators and I don't have to take repair calls? I said, yes, I remember that very well, Steve. Well, what I didn't realize was month 1 was great because nobody would call me. They would call the vendor coordinator for their repair bills, and the vendor coordinator would take care of it all. But then what happened in month 2 and 3 is my owner client started calling me saying, hey, Steve, how come you guys fixed that toilet again that I already talked to you about? And I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Let me look into that and find out. So I'd go to the vendor coordinator. I'd say, hey, how come we fixed this toilet? Shouldn't that have been a tenant thing? And of course, by now it's been a month. The vendor coordinator didn't really remember. So they'd have to look in their notes and they'd tell me and I'd tell the owner. And he said it turned into a nightmare because I never had a clue what was happening on the maintenance side of things. See, he was responsible for explaining to the owners why they spent the money, but he wasn't responsible for spending the money. The vendor coordinator spent the money, then Steve had to tell him why it was spent. Now, could you or could a PM company come up with like a middle ground, communication? Yeah, you could. But ideally, if you have your magic wand, you want to structure it in such a way that this is true. That who's ever spending the money, who's ever authorizing the repair, has to be the one to tell the owner why the money was spent. Otherwise, the best job in the world is a vendor coordinator. Person who takes the maintenance calls and sends out the vendor. It's the best job in the world if you don't have to be the one to explain to the owner why you spent their money. If any of you have a position like that in your company, sign me up. You can hire me. I'll come work for you. That's the best job in the world. Are you kidding me? A tenant calls and is like, hey, my toilet's broken. I'm like, plumber's on the way. Next call, hey, my carpet is torn. Hey, no problem. I'll get a carpet company right out there. Refrigerator's not working. Appliance company on the way. I'm a hero. I love that. I don't have to have any responsibility of telling owner clients why I spent their money. I can just spend. That position gets totally turned in a different way if I, as the individual who's taking that call, know that I have to explain to the owner why I spent their money. So now the tenant's like, hey, my toilet's backed up, I need it fixed. I'm like, oh man, that owner's going to be crazy why we spent their money. Well, hold on, Mr. Tenant, didn't this back up last month and we sent somebody out and there was a toy in the drain? Yeah, well, that was last month. Well, it's actually going to be your responsibility because your kid probably put a toy down the drain. So you know what? You're just going to handle it differently because you know you're going to be talking to that owner client down the way. Hey, I hope that's helpful. Jump on our website if you've got other questions, pmbuild.com. Processes, system manuals, everything on this site on PM Build is designed to help you build, help you grow, help you protect your PM company. Once you can put those building blocks together, you're much more successful. And a big part of that is making sure you get maintenance under control. Hey, I wish you a lot of success.